From the Dominion Post in Morgantown, West Virginia, this is the Postcast, the audio companion to the Dominion Post newspaper. In this episode, a construction project brings big changes to traffic in Saberton, an armed man barricades himself inside a home on North Willie Street, and local updates on the coronavirus situation. I'm your host, Chris Schultz, and these are the week's top stories. Last week, a temporary light was installed at the intersection of Earl Corps Road and Deckers Creek Boulevard, just outside of the Dominion Post's offices. Though the lights aren't on yet, they are the first sign of some big changes coming very soon to the Saberton area. Joining me now is Dominion Post reporter Ben Connolly. Ben, what exactly is the roadwork that we're going to be seeing done on the back of this temporary light?
Well, what's going on in the middle of Saberton is going to be torn up here in the next week or so. The DOH has been looking at that intersection there by Hardee's and the dollar store, the CVS, for a number of years. I think 2014 or 2015 they first started looking at it. Originally they wanted to put a roundabout in. That got scrapped. Now basically what they're doing, it's an oddly configured intersection, and they want to make it just a more standard T intersection with Greenbag Road where it connects with West Virginia 7 or Earl Corps Road. That's the major gist of the project. They're also going to be changing the way that short connector between West Virginia 7 and Saberton Avenue functions. You'll no longer be able to access Saberton Avenue from West Virginia 7 through that connector. It'll be right in, right out only, simply to access Hardee's and Woodburn Shanks, but you won't be able to pass from Saberton Avenue onto West Virginia 7 using that anymore.
It sounds great that they're going to be normalizing that intersection. How is this going to impact local traffic patterns?
It's going to have substantial impact to traffic. Folks have seen the temporary light, I'm sure, that's gone up at Deckers Creek Boulevard where it connects with West Virginia 7 there by the newspaper office. They put that light there because once the work starts, as early as next week, you won't be able to come into Saberton on Greenbag Road and continue around to the right and get on West Virginia 7. You'll have to come left and get on up here by the newspaper office. So due to the substantial increase in traffic they're expecting at that intersection, they put that light in. You know, there are a number of questions still. Obviously, Darst is a busy street, or Mineral Avenue. It's a steep hill, and it empties right there within feet of where this temporary light is. So there is some concern about, what if people are trying to turn left off of Darst onto 7 right there by the light? Is it going to back traffic up? So there are some, I think, conversations still with the DOH about what they're doing there. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them maybe make that a right turn only off of Mineral Avenue or Darst, but that's yet to be seen.
So Ben, how is this going to impact that neighborhood off of Mineral Avenue, Norwood neighborhood? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right, it is, and there's been some concern the entire time that the DOH has been talking about this intersection from the folks who live there in the Norwood neighborhood. Particularly, it's not so much the temporary issue on Darst and the light there. Their concern is the closure of that connector by Hardee's. Because if you go, for folks who are familiar with Saberton Avenue, once you get past that connector, the road narrows down into basically a single lane there by that tax office where you have a yield sign, and it's a single lane. You have traffic waiting. You're going back and forth. And their concern is, one, it's going to bottle the neighborhood in to where they're either going to have to go down to Darst or travel through that bottleneck and go to the connector that's about a quarter mile down the road by the bank there in front of the Saberton church. That's really their concern, is it's going to back traffic up into the neighborhood. The traffic through the Norwood neighborhood is substantial. The DOH is saying once the intersection is fixed, hopefully, people will stop using Saberton Avenue as a way to avoid the main route through Saberton.
Yeah, so definitely some big changes coming, temporary changes, though. How long do we expect this project to last?
Depending on whether the DOH says July is the expected completion date.
And what is that contingent upon?
Weather. I mean, if it rains all spring and they can't get out there and work, it's obviously going to go later into the year.
Gotcha. And Ben, about how much is this expected to cost us?
$1.8 million is what the state is saying.
I guess we'll all be hoping for clear skies moving forward. Thanks so much for being here, Ben.
Thank you.
Early Tuesday afternoon, a large portion of North Willie Street was shut down as police responded to reports of an armed gunman barricaded inside of a house. After a brief standoff, police were able to take the suspect into custody without incident. I'm joined now by Dominion Post reporter Will Dean. Will, thanks for joining me in studio today.
Yeah, no problem.
So, Will, can you explain to us how exactly did this incident begin?
Yeah, so it started as a domestic dispute call. According to police, the victim was this guy's wife, and a friend she was texting, or somebody she was texting, alerted police to what was going on in the situation. When police got there to the house on North Willie Street, just a little bit past downhill, she ran out and she told officers that he had a gun and he had pointed it at him and he had barricaded himself in there. We actually found out on Wednesday that he also allegedly sexually assaulted her while pointing the gun at her. Then there was about an hour of a standoff.
Will, the police responded pretty quickly to this incident, and something of note was that the special response team from the Morgantown Police Department was on scene. They were deployed. That is the equivalent of a SWAT team, basically. In your experience as the paper's Cops and Courts reporter, is that level of response normal for an incident like this?
I've been doing this beat for about 2.5 years, and it's the first time I've seen the SRT activated in a real situation that's not just a training scenario or something.
So what about this particular situation merited that heavier response?
So obviously I can't talk about like the police's tactical mindset, but just from my perspective, if there's a guy, you know he has a gun, you know he's got a defensive position, you're not just going to want to send 2 uniformed officers to kick in the door. You're going to want, the extra resources and options that a response team like SRT or SWAT will give you.
Okay. So, Will, what is this suspect being charged with?
He's being charged with first-degree sexual assault and prohibited person in possession of firearm. He is actually a convicted felon. He was convicted of 3 counts of third-degree sexual assault and 2 counts of first-degree sexual abuse in Taylor County in 2002.
And Will, you were actually on scene for this incident. You were able to make it out to North Willie Street. Can you tell us, in your own words, what was the situation like out there?
Yeah, so I kind of actually got there about 30 minutes after it started. Normally I like to be quicker to those things, but I was on a phone call and I wasn't really paying attention. So the police had already had North Willie Street blocked off at the top of College Avenue going towards the traffic circle, and then at the bottom of the Mansion Avenue going towards downtown. So I parked and walked up, and I, along with the rest of the media who arrived about the same time I did, we all kind of got there within the same couple minutes. We stood on the edge of the police, I guess you could call it, barrier, and obviously we weren't allowed to cross that. The police had, a sniper up on a hill looking over the house. Several other officers were, taking cover behind their cruisers with rifles pointed at the house. There was a team of officers up against the house. It looked like they were ready to go in if the situation had called for it. And then we just kind of stood there in the rain for about an hour, and then he came out and surrendered. The specific details of what happened during that hour will have to come out at a later point.
Well, Will, we certainly look forward to your continued reporting on this case as it wends its way through the legal system. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yep. See you again.
Concerns around the spread of novel coronavirus, or COVID-19, have ratcheted up in the last few days. In just the last 24 hours, we have seen organizations from cruise lines to professional sports leagues suspend operations as a preventative measure to hopefully help stem the spread of the virus. We now have an update on the situation in West Virginia, as well as more information about local preparations in the Morgantown area. Joining me again in studio is Dominion Post reporter Ben Connolly. Ben, this is obviously a very complex story, constantly developing as we've seen this week in particular, but can you tell us, as of recording on Thursday afternoon, what is the status of coronavirus in West Virginia?
The status, the latest that we know from the state is that there have been 8 people tested for coronavirus. 7 of those tests have come back negative. There's still 1 test pending. Like you said, as of the start of this recording, there's still 1 test pending. So there are no confirmed cases of coronavirus in West Virginia still.
Obviously, testing is super important in this situation. When I spoke to our colleague, Dominion Post business editor Suzanne Elliott last week, she told me that we were still sending those tests out of state. That has changed since then, correct?
Right. This past weekend, the state got the capability to do the tests here. They receive the testing kits And so now the tests are being conducted at the state laboratory in South Charleston.
So more locally here in the Morgantown area, what has been the response, or I guess more appropriately, what preparations have been taken?
Yeah, so as you would imagine, the county health department is kind of taking the lead role on this, and what they're focusing on right now is communication. They're doing that. They've set up a task force through their communication office in which they're meeting twice weekly in some aspect with the city of Morgantown, the Morgantown Police, University Police, the Sheriff's Department, WVU Hospitals, Mon General, Health Right, just a number of agencies. And the focus of that is they want to be kind of speaking with a unified voice. They want to be putting out one message. They want people to take this seriously, but they also don't want a bunch of misinformation kind of fanning the flames. They don't want people getting hysterical.
Absolutely. You mentioned there among all those different organizations, University Police, WVU Health, the university obviously looms very large in Morgantown. What has their response been this week?
Well, we saw recently the announcement that they were going to go to online classes only following spring break for an undetermined length of time. They didn't really put an end on that. They've also told kids who travel for spring break not to return until they're notified. Most recently, it was announced that they're suspending athletic events.
Continuing with the school systems, what about the local Mon County schools?
As far as Mon County schools, they're treating this like kind of a flu season on steroids, I think you could say. Dr. Campbell, the superintendent, said that they're really kind of doubling down on their message to the kids and everybody in the buildings that we need to be washing our hands. We need to be avoiding contact, common sense stuff, but the things that are going to prevent you from getting sick with an illness like this.
Do they have any plans or contingencies in case that schools need to be closed?
They don't really have, I don't think, a set plan. They don't have a number, if X number of kids are sick or if X number of faculty are sick. Basically, Dr. Campbell explained that 15% rate of absence is the number that would normally close down a school for the flu. It would be 15% across the district that would close schools in the county for the flu. But he also mentioned that, if they have a confirmed case of coronavirus, it's not going to take 15%. It's not going to take 15% of the kids being absent from school for them to make a serious decision about whether they need to have classes.
So, Ben, you mentioned just now the importance of keeping people informed, but also mitigating this hysteria that we've been seeing in certain corners. What can people do moving forward to keep themselves safe, to prevent the spread of this illness?
I think everything that I'm hearing from people is that you just need to take precautions. I mean, kind of like the school is saying, it's kind of like the flu on steroids. It is highly contagious, but it spreads basically the same way the flu spreads. So, you need to be washing your hands. You don't want to be coughing on people. Obviously, you don't want to be getting coughed on or sneezed on. You don't want to be constantly touching your face or handling items. If you're on the phone or, on the computer, you need to be kind of wiping that stuff down, I think. I think really it's just anything that you would do to try to prevent yourself from getting sick with the flu, you need to kind of take those same precautions or, self-quarantine, stay home.
Right, if possible. I think people can take comfort in the fact that there are no confirmed cases as of yet, as of recording, in West Virginia. So, Ben, I want to thank you for your reporting.
Thank you.
That's all for this week's episode. The links to all the stories we discuss are also in the description of this episode on your podcasting app. If you haven't already, subscribe to make sure you don't miss a single episode. We would also really appreciate it if you would take the time to rate and review us. Nobody's exactly sure why, but a rate and a review combo really goes a long way to boost the show. Be sure to check out our sports podcast, Best of 7, which just dropped a new episode this week. Congrats to Andrew and Sean. You can also check out our local history podcast, All About History. A brand new episode is live right now. Head over to dominionpost.com/podcasts to listen. We want to hear from you. Do you like the show? Do you hate the sound of my voice? Is it too loud? Is it too quiet? Let me know. Email podcast@dominionpost.com. Or you can reach out on any of the Dominion Post social media. We're Dominion Post, WV, on Twitter, Dominion Post _WV on Instagram, or go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Dominion Post WV. Tweet directly at me if you like. I'm at Schultz Reports on Twitter. That's SCHULZ. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you back here next week.